right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our weekly Power Lounge. This is your place to hear authentic conversations from those who have power to share. My name is Amy Vaughn, and I am the owner and Chief Empowerment Officer of Together Digital, a diverse and collaborative community of women who work in digital and choose to share their knowledge, power, and connections. You can learn more about us and join the movement at togetherindigital.com. And today we are diving deep into the psychology of brand loyalty with the brilliant Deb Gabor. She has recently led our masterclass on this exact topic about how to turn casual customers into devoted brand evangelists. And Deb is more than a brand consultant. She is also a 3-time best-selling author whose innovative frameworks like the brand values pyramid and ideal customer archetypes have helped to revolutionize how companies connect with their audiences. Her recent insights on hacking Maslow's hierarchy for brand growth have already helped countless organizations build deeper, more meaningful customer relationships. And today we're going to explore that even more on how to create that coveted irrational loyalty to the kind that transforms customers into passionate advocates who couldn't imagine life without your brand. So whether you are an entrepreneur, marketer, business leader, you're in for a treat in learning how to build brands that matter. So very excited to have all of you here with us today. Our live listening audience, we would love it if you have questions. Please share them in the chat. Deb, it is great to have you here with us again. Thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Fantastic. So I know some of our members and folks have met you within the community, but for those who haven't, I'd love for you to share a little bit more about your backstory before we dive into the fun topic of branding, a little bit about how you got into this area and before you became a 3-time best-selling author and brand evangelist. How did you get here?
I like to tell people that I grew up in basically a brandless existence. So when I was a little kid, my whole family is from different parts of Eastern Europe. And so very, very practical, down to earth, pragmatic people who didn't feel like we needed brand name anything when we were growing up. So no brand name clothing. All my friends were wearing their Levi's jeans and their Jordache jeans, and playing with Barbies and Fisher Price things and whatever. And my parents were buying whatever was the cheapest. So I hadn't really been exposed to brands, and actually really didn't understand what brands were or what brands meant until I was 16 years old and got a driver's license and was able to go to McDonald's for the first time and have a McDonald's hamburger cross my lips for the very, very first time. And, always was sort of fascinated by, what does this mean? How could a brand command more money than something that was unbranded or generic? And was always sort of fascinated by that. And then I think I told you this before, that I started my career in journalism, like a lot of marketers do. And I worked in television news, ran an assignment desk and was a reporter, did things like that. And I was really involved in telling stories that were designed not just to inform people, but truly to move people. And there's a strong intersection between storytelling and branding, and there's actual brain science behind it. And so fast forward a little bit to the point in my life at which I couldn't make enough money to support myself as a journalist, which is very often the case. I ended up moving to a corporate job. And my first job, I worked in a super, super high-tech business. My first real job was at AT&T Bell Labs, which I was the lone marketer in a sea of scientists and technologists, tasked with the idea of trying to move people heart, mind, and wallet to care about technological innovations that were coming out of the labs. And really, that's when I kind of got bit by this marketing and branding bug. And so, yeah, I grew up in the technology industry for the first half of my career. I worked in-house, as we say, like people who are
Hmm.
agency people. We talk about being agency people or being in-house people. I was an in-house person doing sort of brand leadership, brand marketing jobs, product marketing jobs, a variety of things like that. I had the pleasure and, the great experience of working at a tech startup that really is credited with being the first company to help consumers get on the internet with 9600 baud modems at US Robotics, and did marketing and branding jobs there, and then ended up on the agency side of the business. And when I was on the agency side of the business, I had an incredible experience working for a really, really great mentor who inspired me to think about brands in a different way. And she was one of the people who helped Steve Jobs launch the Macintosh. And when you go
Wow.
back and look at, these documentaries and movies and stories about that, when that happened, she's a pivotal figure in that whole story. And so I worked with her. It was a PR company for technology companies, and I was a publicist. And so my job again was telling stories, but she had such a unique approach to it, which instead of telling stories about bits and bytes and how many hops to a tier one network and throughputs and things like that, she was able to turn those stories into unique stories of how people's lives could be transformed through the use of technology. And,
Hmm.
I learned right alongside her. And that's what it wasn't really, I wouldn't call it branding, but that's sort of what inspired me to pursue the whole practice more.
Branding. So somewhere between the Big Mac and the woman who helped launch Apple.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Somewhere the Big Mac, my first Big Mac at 16, and then sometime in my early 30s working for this person who launched the Macintosh. And then, frankly,
That's
for me, like
amazing.
working on the launch of a lot of like really exciting technology products, which, in the
Hmm.
go-go days of the technology industry,
Yeah.
when you were bringing new technology to market, often
Uh-huh.
the stories that you were telling were about like technology, right? You were
Uh-huh.
telling stories about, I call it the IDIs, reliability, availability, scalability, manageability,
Uh-huh.
flexibility, which is all comparative. We weren't really telling stories about how technology would impact humans and change their lives, which, really is more emotionally bonding. And so, I really
Hmm.
sort of cultivated this practice of changing the way stories are told and the way that they connect with human beings, which, later on informed the whole methodology that I use and I talk about and I write about for branding.
Yes. Excited to get to some of that later for sure. What was the aha moment that sort of changed, though, how you approach branding, would you say?
I think that it was, I'd like to say it was the McDonald's hamburger. Like, since the first McDonald's hamburger I had when I was 16 years old, I haven't had another one because it's disgusting. But the pivotal moment, I think was probably the first time I actually in that publicist job where I was pitching something and was able to get the attention of a journalist. And it was a journalist at Fortune magazine about like a really, really interesting aviation story that
Hmm.
that ended up not being a story about aviation, but being a story of transformation, a story of like being able to completely change the way people view and use air travel,
Mm.
featuring the human beings behind it. Like, that was the
Yep.
moment that I was like,
Uh-huh.
okay, this is what wins. This is what gets people's attention.
Yep.
That there truly is story behind it, and the story takes the reader or the consumer of that story on this journey of self-discovery. And I was
Uh-huh.
like, this is not just a plane. This is not just like an aviation business. This is a movement that
Uh-huh.
truly has the power to help people envision a different way to travel. And I
Mhm.
think that was my huge aha, was like when I really, really, when you land a cover story for Fortune magazine
Yeah.
about something in a technology driven
Yeah.
marketplace,
It's a big win.
Like that, it turns your head around. It really gets your attention.
Well, and I wonder, did that sort of start to open your eyes to that methodology that you've begun to introduce, unlocking and hacking Maslow's hierarchy, of needs for brand building?
100%, 100%. So yeah, so when I talk about Maslow's hierarchy, I talk about it in a couple of ways in how it is related to branding. And so those of us who are familiar with Maslow's hierarchy, we know that the basic premise here is that we are all on a path to self-actualization. Self-actualization being the pinnacle of Maslow's hierarchy, or the top of that that pyramid construct. The idea that when we get there, we're fulfilling our highest, best value to the world. We are, sort of levitating on a better plane where we are free of judgment for ourselves, free of judgment for others. We are fully accepting who we are. And the idea is that, being a fully self-actualized individual is something that we all strive for. And so what we eat, what we wear, what we drink, the airlines that we use to travel, the cars that we drive, the technology that we buy for ourselves and for our businesses and things like that are all part of our ascension up Maslow's hierarchy, right?
Mhm.
And so out of that, like really trying to understand what is the process that people are going through when they're making decisions about what they buy. Without Maslow's hierarchy, things like Gucci shoes and handbags wouldn't
Right.
exist, right?
Yeah.
When full well that you can get a plastic sack from Walmart to carry your
Right.
personal things versus
Uh-huh.
paying $2,500 for a Gucci handbag. For
Yeah.
me, it was really like I had to peel back the layers of the onion and try to understand, like,
Mhm.
why is this even possible? Like,
Mhm.
what is it about that? And so the hacking of Maslow's hierarchy it's been my life's work for
Yeah.
probably 25 years now.
Mhm. Yeah, there's so much of our identity that gets caught up into that, right? It's like we're
Oh
walking
yeah,
around and that's like our internal how we identify internally is like how we're projecting like externally with the things that we buy, what we
sure.
wear.
Yeah, you mentioned earlier this notion of irrational loyalty, and I define irrational loyalty as this idea that people are so indelibly bonded to a brand they'd feel like they were cheating on it if they were to
Mhm.
choose something else. That's very, very powerful, right?
Mhm.
Irrational loyalty is the thing that allows brands to grow rapidly and more profitably, charge more for products and services, attract and
Right.
retain wildly loyal fans, and really sort of stand out in a sea of sameness. Like, there is
Mhm.
nothing today that you can buy that there isn't an imitation of it, right? And branding
Right.
is the thing that creates these huge companies where the contribution of the value of the brand is worth more than the products that they sell, right?
Mhm.
And so this has always been really fascinating to me, and this notion of irrational loyalty really sort of, you talk about identity, brands becoming part of who you are. Irrational loyalty, the research that we do, we learned that the underpinnings, the psychological underpinnings of this are to create that condition of irrational loyalty. The brand has to become part of the person's identity. It has to become part of who
Yes.
they are.
Uh-huh.
And it has to be indispensable to them, meaning it's
Mhm.
irreplaceable, that you can't
Mhm.
trade it out for something else, right? And
Mhm.
so, there's so much psychology there. Yeah, people want to get up Maslow's hierarchy, but at the end of the day, brands that get to the top of their own Maslow's hierarchy, the ones that are fully self actualized, they become part of the people who use them, and they become
Mm.
irreplaceable to them.
Right. Oh, I love it. There's so much good stuff to kind of unpack there. I have kind of like a follow-up question to that then. Like as is in what ways for people who are trying to who maybe don't feel like they have, they have a brand or a product that or a service that meets a need and they don't feel like they're elevated, but they want to to kind of maybe increase their pricing or to elevate their brand. What are some ways in which they could do that, um, by kind of using this hack?
Yeah. I break it down to like four basic things. Like, and I'll
Uh-huh.
share that with everybody here. I just give this methodology away for free. It, really what you're talking about, Amy, is helping people who have a business, a product, a service, maybe even themselves that they're
Mm-hmm.
trying to brand, and they want to create more sort of financial goodness for themselves, open up new financial territory, open up new
Yeah.
conceptual territory. What they need to do is act like the best brands in the world. And the best brands in the world, they do four things. Number one, they aim their brand at a singular, ideal, archetypal customer. And that is the person who is most highly predictive of their success, right? The one
Mm-hmm.
who is going to pay the most for what you are bringing to the table, right? So
Mm-hmm.
aiming your brand at one person, an archetypal human being for whom your brand is made, and being very,
Yeah.
very focused on that person, knowing everything about them, their values, their beliefs, what keeps them up at night, what are their attitudes, their behaviors, what are their challenges, what makes them feel sexy, all of those kinds of things. So that's number one. Number two, they become part of that person's self-expression, part of their identity. So they
Mm.
understand how they become part of that person. Number
Uh-huh.
three, if you have a business and you want to elevate that and you really want to create a brand that creates irrational loyalty, you're not just different, you're
Mm-hmm.
unique, you're singular. This is where brands get into trouble. We always want to compare what we're selling to
Uh-huh.
everything else, and that's the itties and the ers. It's smaller, it's faster, it's bigger, it's thinner, it's thicker, it's taller, all of those kinds of things. That just opens you up to be compared to everyone else, meaning that your best features are imitable. When you really focus on building a brand that's unique, then you can get to the top of that Maslow's pyramid for brands, right? You can become fully self actualized as a brand. So, number one, aim at an ideal archetypal customer. Number two, become part of that person's self concept. Number three, don't just be different, but be unique. That's the thing that makes a Porsche and not a Mazda, even though
Yeah.
both things fulfill the same basic functional benefits, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then finally, the best brands in the world, they do this essential thing. They make their brand about their customer and not about them, right?
Yep.
I do this
Mm-hmm.
diagnostic with brands all the time. I say, you know what? Go to your mobile phone and open up your company website. And if the first word on the website is the company name or the word we, you're doing it totally
Right. Yeah.
wrong,
I
right?
remember you saying that
Right?
during the
Think
master
of your
class. Yeah.
brand as being heroic
Uh-huh.
to another hero. Like the customer gets to be
Yes.
the hero in this scenario, not you. So, when people are trying to open up more territory for their brand, financial, conceptual, attract more
Mm-hmm.
customers, it's about that relentless focus, but then also really taking on the characteristics of the best brands in the world. And those are the four
I
things
love
right
it.
there.
I love it. And the reason why I threw that question is because I know we have a lot of our listening audience are women who own and run their own small businesses and in
Hmm.
companies, and they tend to undercharge for what they do and or the products and the services they sell. And it's like, how do we encourage them to position themselves in such a way that they can to sell to their highest, most ideal client?
So
And I
the ideal
love, love,
clients
love,
are
love
the
that
ones who are
framework.
going to pay what you're charging, right?
Yeah.
So if you have a small services based business, if you find yourself over servicing clients, it is because they are probably not the ideal clients, right?
Yeah.
Ideal clients are
Yes.
people who appreciate what you are doing. They need and can use what you are doing. When you do this profile of the ideal customer archetype, you should be able to see as they come towards your business, you should be able to see that they exhibit at least 75% of the characteristics of clients who are most ideal. Like I can see
Hmm.
it from miles away. Most importantly, I can see who is not my ideal customer. And when
Uh-huh.
I know that I like, sometimes we consciously take business from someone who's not our ideal customer. I run a
Yeah.
services business. Sometimes you got to keep the lights on, right? You're like, this is
Right.
not ideal. At least I'm conscious about it. I understand
Right.
it, and I can mitigate the risk, right?
Hmm.
But it gives
Absolutely.
me the ability to have choice, and choice is so important when you're running your own business. Otherwise, why
Absolutely.
why do it, right?
Why do this?
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. Oh, love it so much. Thank you, Deb. Also, in your masterclass, you mentioned three key questions that brands should ask themselves. I would love it if you could walk our podcast audience through those as well.
Oh, absolutely. So, like, I just gave you the explanation of the four things that the best brands in the
Hmm.
world do. Number two, three, and four can be summed up in these three questions. I call them the brand swagger questions. And I always
Hmm.
tell people if you want to just get started in branding, try to answer these questions, right? And the other hint about this is that through answering these questions, you are formulating the foundation of your strategic brand messaging. The first question, which is the becoming part of someone's self image, becoming part of their identity, is to answer this question. What does it say about my customer or my client that they use my brand? Not what does it say about them that they use these widgets, but what does it say about them that they use me, right?
Mm-hmm.
So for instance, I have a research strategy and marketing firm for B2B technology and professional services companies. What it says about them is that they are no nonsense, innovative, thoughtful marketing leaders who don't have time for BS,
Mm-hmm.
who want to be pushed not just to do the best they can, but whatever it takes for them to win. It says that they have a short runway and a lot of attention is on them to get things right. That's what it says about them,
Mm-hmm.
that they work with me and the company that I represent. So it's really important that it's, not what does it say about them that they use an outside marketing firm, but what does it say about them that they use me? So that's question number one. Right? So what does it say about me? If you knew that I drove here today in a Ford F-150 truck, you've already made up a story about me, right? Right? I'm reliable. I like to help my friends move. I'm maybe a little bit
Right.
rugged. I got a dog. I'm from Texas, right? Like you have a story about me, right? So that's question number one. Question number two is that question about uniqueness. And that question is so simple to ask, but the hardest one to answer. And this is where I earn all my money, right? What is the one thing that people get from my brand? They get from me, they get from my company, they get from my product. What's the one thing they get from me that they don't get from anyone else? Mm-hmm. And so back to the example where I was explaining about the company that I run, the one thing they get from us, they can get marketing services anywhere, right? They can get research, brand strategy, marketing services. I always joke around and say, you can't swing a cat over your head and not hit 150 other people who do exactly what we do, right? They can hire anyone for those things. But the one thing they get from us, they don't get from anyone else, is the proverbial kick in the ass. Yeah. They get a kick in the pants. They get propelled to do whatever it takes, right? They come to us specifically for the kick in the pants. We are not for everyone. Believe me, I've never gone through a brand strategy engagement that didn't make people really, really uncomfortable and make people feel like they want to quit sometimes, right? Yeah. Because the work of branding is hard. And my goal with my organization, like our BHAG, is to take a disruptive dark horse brand and turn them into a top 5 most valuable global brand. So that's Google, Apple, Amazon, Facebook, and Tencent. Those are your top most valuable global brands. My goal is to take someone that no one knows and make them one of those, right? I'm not looking to be everybody's favorite marketing agency, right? So the one thing you get from us is the kick in the pants. So really, really getting into that singularity is super important. And then that third question, the third of those brand swagger questions, it's this simple. How do I make my customer the hero in their own story? They're the ones who get to stand on the top of the hill. They plant the flag. They make the declaration. They get the medal. They get the trophy. They get the girl. They get the boy. Whatever it is that they want at the end, they win. How do I get them there? And so when you take those 3 questions, what does it say about a person that they use my brand? What's the one thing they get from me that they don't get from anyone else? And how do I make them a hero? Can you imagine that the answers to those 3 questions formulate like the strategic underpinnings of your entire brand story, right? They're very, very powerful. And it's taken me a long time to like really refine this methodology. Right. But if you go through that, it helps you humanize the brand and it helps you tap into those deep emotional connections that get you up above the fray of bits and bytes and speeds and feeds and itties and ers.
Yeah, I agree. I did this little piece a while back about so many brands and branding. It was always about, and it would always kind of honestly piss me off. It was just like, oh, branding is, guidelines and fonts and colors and tone of voice. And I was like, no, it's not TOV. It's POV. It's a point of view. What point of view do you have about
your unique
the
point
world?
of view,